So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I want to talk just briefly about my second most favorite state and my first most favorite state, and just some concepts for you and thoughts. Number one, let's go to the next slide. We both should be very proud of the fact that we have got some of the best national parks in the world. And I get emotional talking about my first experiences to national parks, but it was right here at Olympic National Park in Mount Rainier as a young man. A little bit different here, and I don't know if you all will agree with me, because sometimes you might view BC as the enemy across the border, but the truth of the matter is we do some very unique things, and I'll be happy to talk to you about that with respect to co-promoting and leveraging our dollars to promote highway traffic with our friends in Canada. And I just wanted to just say this. Sometimes we all get so consumed, and we've got small and large DMOs that participate in small businesses that think, you're getting left out because you're focusing on Anchorage. And there are people that don't call us the Alaska Travel Industry Association, they call us the Anchorage Travel Industry Association. And the truth of the matter is, what we need to stay focused on as an industry and be united in cohesion is we worry about growing the pie, as Mike says, bringing more visitors to Alaska. Then you guys can individually worry about where they go after that. Next slide. I'm trying to go as fast as I can, Tom. How am I doing? Okay. Alaska is strictly a long-haul market, a little bit different than Washington, and just for your future thinking. And what I mean by that is, I often say there are two states in the Union that really can't market and promote regionally, and you both know who they are, our friends in Hawaii and in Alaska. I kiddingly say, if all 35,000 people from Whitehorse came to Alaska, it wouldn't really make a lot of difference. So we have a good relationship. We're both a cruise destination. And there is one state, Mike, that will not say we're a winery market, and that is Alaska. And the other difference is, you can say people come, they want to eat, but we are not Metro Natural, we're not Seattle, and nor do we want to be. So I'm going to try to give you briefly here, just some recommendations and some thoughts for consideration as you all move forward. First of all, I would just strongly consider, I think CTC's concept is very, very good. I'm very proud of what we've done also, and I think you need to look at what taxes and assessments you have in your state right now, and create the right model for yourself. Take some time, think through before you just, obviously you want to keep the assets going that you have, and it's unfortunate what's happening there, but at the end of the day, you need to all be unified and come up with the right group. One idea is a nonprofit trade association. Maybe it's a function of the Washington Travel Alliance.Maybe it's another government organization. Maybe not. I would make one recommendation to you. If you continue with a good, strong public-private partnership, consider bifurcating what I call that trade group, and I'll be the first to say that we are a trade and a marketing organization, but keep them separate, because I will be real candid and tell you there have been times when we, as an association, have had to take into consideration what advocacy positions we've taken because of the fact that, well, if we do this, will this legislator vote against us because he's on the other side of the fence? So I think you need to keep them. I would strongly recommend you keep them bifurcated and separate and distinct. You might have a reporting structure and work with them, but you need to keep your marketing entity, for lack of a better word, pure. And absolutely imperative, you need strong representation from all sectors in that public-private partnership. Geographically, but just as important, you need large businesses, you need the Alaska Airlines, you need the large cruise companies, but you need the small B&B, you need the small DMO. So you need a good solid representation, because at the end of the day, you all need to be at the table. Next slide. If you go down a path of you're going to work with the government, the state of Washington and Olympia, I would absolutely urge you to look at considering and developing, and I will just say this, for a group obviously you've got some challenges ahead of you. Our statewide annual convention, the biggest we've ever had, is 700. To have 500 people in this room is a testament to what you all believe is important, and travel and tourism is important to this state. So that's a great testament to all of you being here. But what I mean by this is a strong grassroots efforts. Work with your DMOs, your chambers, and your other organizations, and engage them to work hard to have a solid grassroots campaign. that will allow for you to make a dent to your senators and your representatives in Washington, in Olympia, excuse me. When we started our grassroots campaign, which was about 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have one when I first got on board, and we had some great board of directors leaders who pushed that needle forward, and we had the first year maybe 60 or 70 folks. We now have over 200 who say, yes, I'll volunteer to do something. And we ask them to do one thing, and we're very specific and very simple. Write a letter to your legislator telling him what you need or why we need to get to $20 million or pass this bill. Now, some of them will do some other things beyond that, and we'll ask them, but we keep them very engaged and constant dialogue with them. And then at our annual convention, we recognize all 200 that stepped up to the plate with banners and asking them to stand. So it's a good way. I absolutely believe that the reason that we went from an 11.7 budget in 2010 to FY11 to an $18.7 million budget, which was a huge jump for us, was because of our grassroots efforts. So really strongly think you need to consider that. Next slide. I'll just be straightforward and blatant. This is an advertisement, a plug for the U.S. Travel Association. I completely concur with Mike. I believe that the U.S. Travel Association is doing good work for us on a national and an international level. And besides that, it can be a great resource for you. So I would strongly suggest that WTA become members of that association. And it can help you with your grassroots efforts. We actually plagiarize a lot of the stuff that they send us in our messaging and our communications to our grassroots folks in Alaska. And strongly consider you send some representatives to ESTO, which is the Education for State Tourism Organizations. I believe it's in Salt Lake this year at the end of August. Good place. And I've picked up and learned a lot in how I work with my fellow travel and visitor organizations in the state of Alaska because of ESTO. So again, strongly believe in it. Next slide. Thank you. You're there already. Okay. Identify your revenue source and take ownership. And that goes back to what I said before. At the end of the day, I strongly recommend that before you go down a funding path and identify whatever your sources are, whether they're self-assessment or taxes, if you're going to work with your legislature, work hard to identify those sources and take hold of them and say they're yours. Because we've had that battle, and literally it's ongoing right now. I won't get into the details as much as just say we could literally end up in the state of Alaska, believe it or not, with a zero travel budget this year. Not likely, but not to where we were at 18.7. So I think, and part of that battle is they still don't recognize the visitor industry sources of revenue. Market Washington as a state, and then worry about where they go. We've talked about that already, Mike and I, so we'll keep moving. Research, again, and it looks like you already started to do that, and I think that's awesome. Absolutely, identify that economic contribution, but just as important, not just for you as members and businesses that are involved, but for your government, whether they're at a local or regional or state. Demonstrate to them what those ROIs are and your metrics. And there's a myriad of ways to do that, whether that's travel awareness, intentions, how many brochures you distribute. There's a ton of ways to do that. But make sure you have good, solid ROI. Tourism is a bipartisan issue. You know, Mike mentioned earlier that what Roger Dow and the U.S. Travel Association has done, and I'll just tell you straight out forward, I don't care whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, an independent, a Tea Party member, if they're for tourism, I'm for them. And the best way I can make that example is I was honored enough to be asked to speak before the Senate Commerce Committee about the Travel Promotion Act about 3 or 4 years ago, back when Uncle Ted, Senator Ted Stevens, was our senator, and he was on that committee. Flash forward, and I get a little emotional because I think Ted Stevens did some great things for Alaska. We have a new senator who's a Democrat, Senator Mark Begich. He was one of the very first senators in his session to sign on as a co-sponsor for the Travel Promotion Act. So again, Roger Dow and I have talked about this, whether it's at a state or a local level, I don't really care. Republican or Democrat, if you're for the travel industry, I want to be supportive of you. Lastly, unity. And what I really mean by that is, and I could give you a number of examples, I'll just give you one. About 7 years ago, we had come forth with a different plan that would identify our assessment model. And it was tanked. And the reason it was tanked to a large degree was we did not have complete unity with our friends, and specifically with the Anchorage Convention and Visitors Bureau, because it was a self-assessment on hotel lodging. So as a group, as an organization, and sometimes I will, I'll be the first to stand up and say, we identify ourselves as the travel and visitor industry, but we're retail, we're tour products, we're hotels, we're cars, we're airlines, we're cruise lines, and we don't always see eye to eye. And I'm just going to submit straightforward to you, if you're not together, don't go. You need to be in unison and have a message that you can all be supportive of, whether you're in Banks Lake, Walla Walla, Spokane, or Vancouver, Washington. And I just one final example. One of the things that we did, and actually this came out of my attendance at ESTO, is that we literally yearly sit down and meet with our fellow travel industry organizations, AHLA, the Alaska Hotel Lodging Association, the Alaska Campground Owners Association, the Alaska Wildlife Recreation Tourism Association, the Alaska Act, which represents the cruise industry, and the Alaska Cruise Industry. And we just sit down and say, okay, here's what our issues are. How can we be supportive of each other? Can we stand down? And frankly, again, part of the reason that we got that increase in budget this last year is because 5 of those organizations were very, very specific and distinct in standing up and saying, you need additional marketing to promote Alaska as a destination because my hotels, my restaurants benefit from more visitors coming to Alaska. So with that, again, it's an honor to be here. I do truly think Alaska is the second best state in the Union, not California. And I'm thankful to Tom and others for giving me this great opportunity to come back to Washington. Thank you.